All right, y'all made me pull up my box of books called Extra Bibles. All right, so this comment is rightly pointing out that in Jeremiah, the NIV adds the words just. God is not just demand sacrifice, which the word just is not there in the Hebrew. The NIV, like all translations, has some theological priors that it's bringing to the text to make it make sense. So Jeremiah can't contradict the Torah. It's not that God didn't desire sacrifice at all. He didn't just desire a sacrifice, even though that's not what Jeremiah says. And Jeremiah is absolutely contradicting, bringing new ideas to the Torah. Let me show you another example of the translators bringing their assumptions into the text. This is Romans 5:9 with the NASB, which is usually praised for being super literal. And it says, much more than, having now been justified by his, that being Jesus' blood, we shall be saved from the wrath of God through him. Notice how of God is in italics, if you can see it on the screen. That's because the words of God is not there in the text. This is the Bible I pulled out of my box. This is an interlinear New Testament. So you have the Greek text on top and an English translation on the bottom. And you can see Romans 5:9. By much then rather, having been justified now in or by the blood of him, we will be saved through him from the wrath. Not the wrath of God, just from the wrath. So Bible translators have to answer, what is the wrath? And if you've got a theological system that says that we are being saved from God, from God's wrath. God is so upset at humanity, so upset at sin, that he is wrathful towards us, and that Jesus has to die in order to save us from God's wrath, then you're going to add English words into your translation to make it make sense. Jesus' blood saves us from the wrath of God, right? It has to be of God. But what if you have a different theological system? What if your theological system does not assume that God has to save us from God's self, that Jesus' blood has to save us from the wrath of God, but you have a theological system that says that Jesus saves us from the power of sin and death, which does not come from God, but comes from the powers, from these sort of mythopoetic powers that are ravaging creation and the cosmos, and that Jesus' death doesn't save us from God, but saves us from those powers, aka the wrath. One possibility comes from an apocryphal book called The Wisdom of Solomon, which would have been very popular and well known when Paul was writing Romans. And the wrath was not God. The wrath was this sort of personified power that broke out and hurt the Israelites, pulling from the stories from Numbers 16 and Numbers 18. And Wisdom of Solomon is very intentionally removing divine language from what happens to the Israelites and ascribing it to this personified power of wrath that seems to be the result of human rebellion. In other words, the wrath is not a result of God's anger against humanity. The wrath is a result of human systems of oppression that cause pain and heartache to other humans. This then makes sense of what Jesus did on the cross. Jesus is not confronting the Father. Jesus is not confronting God. Jesus is God. Jesus is confronting the powers of evil, death, and darkness that put Jesus on the cross. God didn't put Jesus on the cross. People did. Empire did. Systems of harm did. Therefore, the gospel, the good news, what salvation is not Jesus saving us from the wrath of God. The good news is that Jesus is breaking the systems, the powers of death, oppression, and empire that threaten all humanity. And Jesus goes up on the cross to confront those powers and say, no more.